central message of Christmas is this. Through the incarnation, Jesus came into the world. And this incarnation indicates that Jesus is not ordinary. He's not an ordinary person. Jesus is both divine, and yet he is a human being as well, too, at the same time. That is the incarnation. And the incarnation didn't happen so that we would know that God exists. The incarnation took place so that God would be near us. J.I. Packer wrote this statement. I really like this one here. He said, God became a man. The divine became a baby, unable to do anything more than to lie and stare, needing to be fed and changed and taught to speak, just like any other child. And the more we think about this, the more amazing it gets. Because you see, no fictional book is so fantastic as the truth of the incarnation. In Matthew chapter 1 and verse 20 we read, what is conceived in her, in Mary, is from the Holy Spirit. And this completes the prophecy that was given many, many years before by Isaiah in chapter 7 and verse 14, where it says, and the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. The incarnation is an incredible reality. The incarnation is fantastic when you think about it. And the incarnation means simply God with us. However, and this is a dilemma for a lot of people today, to accept and to believe and to try to understand and wrap their head around the incarnation, God becoming one of us. But this was also the dilemma that faced Joseph back those many years ago. To believe in the incarnation, to believe what the Bible wrote about this. When I'm talking about the Bible for Joseph, I'm talking about the Old Testament. To believe those incredible statements in the Old Testament. And as we look into the life of Joseph, we will see that he had a faith. As he's willing to, for however, whatever strength he had, to accept these new realities into his life and just to work with them. There's not a whole lot of information, is there, about the life of Joseph, what kind of a person he is. He's only mentioned a few times in the entire New Testament. And yet I believe those few times that he's mentioned can give us an indication of what kind of person he is. Can give us an indication of the faith that he had, of the character, of the convictions that he had. See, I believe that Joseph acts on faith and that he chooses to believe God. And he chooses to believe Mary. I believe that Joseph believed in Mary. I really do, because you see, when he was confronted with this statement of Mary, when Mary said, I'm expecting a child and God is the Father, he didn't believe Mary at first, did he? But he believed in Mary. And how can I tell that he believed in Mary? Because it says in the Bible that when he worked through his emotions, when he worked through his initial responses, it says he wanted to do what was good for Mary. Right? He believed in Mary. Do we understand the difference that would have made in her life? To know that even though Joseph struggled to understand what she was trying to tell him, he believed in her enough to do what was right for her. What kind of a difference does that make in your life when you know somebody believes in you? Do you make mistakes once in a while? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because it would be pretty obvious that we all make mistakes, right? But to know that there are people in our lives who believe in us, in spite of all the mistakes that we make, in spite of all of the down times we have, all of the failures that we have, and we look at ourselves and we say, I've blown it again, but knowing that somebody believes in us, it gives us strength, doesn't it? It gives us courage to go on. It gives us a sense of security, doesn't it? To know that somebody believes in us. You see, Joseph chose even before he heard from the angel, he believed in Mary, which is an incredible statement. It shows what kind of commitment, what kind of character Joseph really is. He thinks, how can I best help Mary through this as well, too? He's not just thinking about his own feelings. And imagine what he's going through. Imagine the feelings that Joseph is going through, the anger, the hurt, the confusion that he feels. You know, our actions are reactions. They show our maturity. Now, let me state right at the onset when I go down this path here that understand this is that we're all growing, right? And sometimes it's obvious, and that means by the pant sizes that we wear. We're all growing. You know, we're not growing up anymore, we're growing out. But we're all growing in the faith too. We're all growing in learning and growing in maturity as well too. As we allow God to reveal to us the areas, the weaknesses in our lives, and we ask God's help to start to deal with those areas. We're growing, we're learning. But our reactions they really are an indication of our maturity, our reactions. And you think about this for just a few moments. You think about how Joseph would have felt. And it doesn't say in the Bible that maybe initially he got very upset, and it's quite possible he got very upset, but he went back and he reflected on it, he thought it through, and then he thought clearly, what should I do? What's in the best interest of everybody here? See? We have to learn more and more just to stop, especially when we're emotionally involved, just to stop for a moment and reflect, stop for a moment and think. And then react, and then react. And this is what Joseph does. And Mary is encouraged, not simply because Joseph believes in her, but because he's now going to stick with her. He believes in her, and he believes her as well, too. And I want you to think once again about how difficult this would have been for Joseph to believe this message from the angel. Again, this is not at all in the mindset of a Jewish person to believe in the incarnation. They believe that there's such a chasm, such a separation between people and God that they can never come close. That God will never come close in that fashion there. And in some ways I think that it's a fear that they have of God. And not a healthy fear either. Let me give you an example. This fellow I know about, he had a friend who was a jeweler, and he was Jewish. I figured I could finally say a Jewish jeweler and get it right. And he went to his friend, and he said, I said, I bought a nice necklace for my wife, and I want you to engrave something on the necklace. And his friend said, yes, I'll do that for you. And then he said, I want you to engrave the words, God bless you, and then he gave us the name of his wife. And so the jeweler friend took out his pen and he starts writing down, and he writes, G, bless you. And his friend goes, no, I want you to spell it out. God bless you. And his friend said, wait a minute. He said, I will do this once on the necklace, but I will not write it out frivolously. Because you see, they will not pronounce the name of God. They will not pronounce the Old Testament name, Yahweh. They won't say that. They won't say in English, they won't say God, because for them they can't do that. Why? Because there's a fear, there's a separation between them and God. But the incarnation is God saying, yes, there is, but here I am. I am with you. And for Joseph to wrap his head around that and to say, okay, not only do I believe in Mary, but I believe Mary, and I believe God, and then this is going to happen. But there's other reasons that will cause Joseph to struggle with this. Understanding that Joseph and Mary were living in what we would call a shame and honor society. Now let me sort of give it to you in this kind of a picture. Picture a ladder, okay? A social ladder. And in this kind of a society, it's important to be somewhat up on that ladder, to be respected, to be honored, or you will be shamed. So let's take a look now at Joseph. Joseph is a carpenter. In those days, carpenters don't make a whole lot of money. That's going to put him pretty low on the ladder, right? Oh, but wait a minute now. He's a descendant of King David, so that's going to bring him up a few rungs. This is really important for this society. At the same time, there are a lot of people who say, well, I'm a relative, I'm a descendant of David. That's going to bring him down a few more. Now he's struggling to stay on this social ladder to find respect. Oh, but wait a minute, he's going to get married, he's going to have a family, that's going to bring him up a few. Well, people can do the math. That's going to bring him down a few more. And imagine him trying to explain to his family, his friends, this story. Where do you think that's going to bring him on the social ladder? He's going to try to explain the story, and people are either going to laugh at him, or as a Jewish custom goes, and I was going to use Alex as an illustration, they would shake their beards at him. Oh my heavens, isn't this a sad, sad reality? Look what's happening to Joseph. I can't do it effectively, but Alex pretty well could. Joseph's reaction shows courage, doesn't it? It shows courage. It shows maturity and it shows courage. It shows courage in the face of contempt of the people around them. You just imagine for one moment what it would have been like for Joseph, thinking about where he is on the social ladder. And then all of this happens and he goes, okay, I'm gone. This is lost. It's a lost cause. Nonetheless, what does it say is his reaction after the angel talks to him? Matthew chapter 1 and verse 24. It's verse 24 up there. Actually, in my notes, it doesn't say chapter 1, so we get it all wrong. I put it together for you, okay? It says, when Joseph woke up, after the angel spoke to him, he did what the angel of the Lord commanded him and took Mary home as his wife. He hears God, and what does he do? He gets up and he just acts, right? He acts. He acts regardless of the contempt that he might feel from others. You see, for us in the Western world, holding on to our Christian values, our Christian ethics, our Christian beliefs has been fairly easy for us here. Isn't that true? When we consider other countries, we consider like China and Afghanistan and Iran and North Korea. And in those countries, you can be put to death for saying you're a Christian. They're having a difficult time, and they really feel the persecution. But let me suggest to you that more and more here in the West, we're becoming a target. We're becoming a target more and more. We are considered intolerant and discriminatory because we hold on to our belief systems. Let me read this statement that came out by the Canadian Human Rights Commission just a little while ago. They stated this: providing a day off for Christmas constitutes religious intolerance and discrimination. Did you hear that? That was just put out a few weeks ago. And they went on to say, a demonstration of Canada's colonialist religious intolerance. That's how the Human Rights Commission of Canada views Christianity today. We're becoming more of a target. It's a reality. So it takes courage. It takes courage to stand up for you know what is right. It takes courage to stand up for what you believe in, especially when it's unpopular. But it's just like Joseph. For Joseph, there was risk involved in believing and acting according to his belief. And nonetheless, he made the choice to listen to God, to believe Mary, and then to act accordingly. And his actions show courage. It takes courage to believe. It takes courage to be obedient. It takes courage to stand up for our moral convictions, for what we know is right, and move forward. It also takes courage to give up our rights. And Joseph is giving up a right here. That's the right of self-determination, the right of self-will. Let me give it to you in this story here. And I'll put Joseph and Zacharias together. You know Zacharias? Zacharias is the father of John the Baptist. And so let me read this story to you here from Luke chapter 1 and verse 59. So it was on the 8th day that they came to circumcise the child. And they would have called him by the name of his father, which is Zacharias. Was that the name that he got? Help me out here. Thank you. But his mother answered and said, no, he should be called John. But they said to her, there is no one among your relatives who's called by this name. And then they immediately, and I'm adding this in because it's a cultural setting, they dismissed her words and they looked to Zacharias. Now Zacharias can't talk because he didn't believe God and God took away his ability to talk. And so they're making these signs to Zacharias. What do you want to call him, Zacharias? What do you want to call him? And so he calls for a tablet. And he writes this down. His name is John. And what did they do? They all marveled at it. What? And I love this part in the Bible. It says, immediately Zacharias' mouth was open and his tongue loose. And he spoke what? Praises to God. Praises to God. See, understand this. In the Jewish setting, the father has absolute rights over all the children. And he is the only one to get to choose the name of the children. It's his right. It's his responsibility. He has absolute right over the children. And in these two situations here, with both Zacharias and Joseph, when they made the choice to be obedient and to love God and to follow God, they gave up that right. God named their boys. And not only that, for Joseph, when the angel's saying this to Joseph, he is saying, not only do you have to raise this child, not only do you have to provide for this child, you can't name him and he is your master. He loses his rights. And so he shows courage in giving up his right for self-determination. Jesus said in Luke chapter 9, verse 23, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves. See, it takes courage to give up our rights for self-determination. But let me leave you with this thought. Listen carefully to these words. We will never know who we really are until we allow Jesus to be a real part of our life. That is when we learn our true identity. Did you hear that? I'll give you an example. I have a friend who is an accountant. I don't mean my son. He's an accountant, but I have a friend who's an accountant. And he told me this. He said, and understand it, this is a good job. He makes good money. He's done well for himself. But this is what he said. He stated, how dare I choose this occupation for myself? He said, the me of those many years ago forced the me of today to do something I don't like. He didn't know who he was like back then. He didn't know his true identity. He knows it now and he goes, I don't like this. Well, we'll never know our true identity until we allow Jesus to be a real part of our life. Joseph had all these plans for his life. And yet he chooses to accept Mary and to accept this baby. And as that lovely song says, a baby changes everything. And he had worked past his emotions, he'd worked through his emotions, and he decided that this was the right thing to do, and he went ahead and he did it. God interrupted all his plans, and he just said yes. So his actions, Joseph's actions, shows courage in face of contempt. It shows courage to give up his self-determination, and it shows the courage to trust and to believe God. I like these statements. The first time we see that when the angel spoke to Joseph for the very first time, what does it say? He rose up and did as the angel said. That was it. Bottom line. He just did it. Just did it. Then there's a second time the angel comes to Joseph. We see this in Matthew chapter 2, verse 13. When they had gone, that's the wise men, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said. Take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child and kill him. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt. The angel speaks to him, and he gets up, right then and there, and he acts. And then another time in Matthew chapter 2, verse 19. After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, said, Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who are trying to take the child's life are dead. So what did he do? You sleep on it? Think about it. It just simply said, so he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. Each time God spoke, Joseph obeys. And each time his obedience meant risk and inconvenience, but he still obeyed. Joseph's actions show us he is willing to trust God, right? To depend on God. Let me share a few verses of some songs that we know. When we walk with the Lord in the light of his word, what a glory he sheds on our way. While we do his good will, he abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. And then the song we sang earlier on, "'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus." Just to take him at his word. Just to rest upon his promise. Just to know, thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him. How I proved him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus. Precious Jesus. Oh, for grace to trust him.